The ship floated quietly through the dark space. Captain Jake Morrison looked out the window at the stars that surrounded his vessel. He had been doing this job for almost 2 years now. His ship was called the Horizon's Edge, and it carried 43 people. They were not soldiers. They were scientists and explorers who wanted to learn about new worlds and meet new species. Jake liked his job. Every day brought something new to discover. His crew was good at what they did. There was Amy Parker, who knew everything about ship engines. There was Greg Hayes, who was smart with computers and alien technology. There was Henry Walsh, who kept everyone safe. All of them believed in peace and working together with other species in the galaxy. The Galactic Coalition had given them this mission. They were supposed to map new areas of space and look for planets that might support life. It was peaceful work. It was important work. Jake never expected trouble. The trouble came without warning. 7 huge ships appeared in front of them. They came out of nowhere like ghosts becoming solid. Each ship was 3 times bigger than the Horizon's Edge. Their weapons were already glowing with power, ready to fire. Jake felt his stomach drop. He knew these ships. Everyone in the Coalition knew about them. They were Kraith warships. Amy ran to Jake's side. Her face had gone pale. She looked scared, and Jake understood why. "Captain, our shields are up, but we cannot fight them. We only have small weapons. We are not a warship." Jake knew she was right. The Horizon's Edge was built for exploring, not for fighting. They had some basic defenses, but nothing that could stop even one of those massive Kraith vessels. Now they faced 7 of them. He opened a communication channel to the Kraith ships. Maybe he could talk to them. Maybe he could avoid a fight. The screen came alive with the face of the Kraith commander. It was not a pleasant sight. The creature had a face covered in hard plates like armor. It had too many eyes. Its mouth was full of sharp parts that clicked together when it talked. "Human ship, you will surrender now," the Kraith commander said. Its voice was cold and hard. "Your species is a threat to Kraith expansion. We will take you for questioning and study." Jake kept his voice calm and steady. "We are on a peaceful mission. We mean no harm to the Kraith Empire. We have no quarrel with you." The alien made a sound like laughter. Its mouth parts clicked together rapidly. "Peaceful missions gather information. Your coalition thinks it can stop us with treaties and agreements. We will show them they are wrong. We will start with you." Jake looked at Greg Hayes. The younger man shook his head slightly. There was no way to escape. They could not outrun these ships. They could not fight them. They were trapped. "Stand down now," the Kraith commander continued. "If you refuse, we will destroy your ship. Everyone will die." Jake looked around his bridge. He saw the faces of his crew. These were good people. They had families back home. They had dreams and hopes. They signed up to explore the universe, not to die in a battle they could never win. He had to make a choice. It was the hardest choice of his life. "We surrender," he said quietly. The words felt like poison in his mouth, but he had no other option. The safety of his crew had to come first. The Kraith came aboard within an hour. They were fast and brutal. They carried weapons and they knew how to use them. They forced all the humans into the cargo bay. They separated Jake from his crew. He watched helplessly as soldiers pushed his people onto Kraith transport ships. His crew looked scared, but they also looked at him with trust. They believed he would keep them safe somehow. Amy Parker was the last one to board a transport. She turned and looked back at Jake. Her eyes showed something that was not quite defeat. It was more like a promise. She would not give up. None of them would give up. The Kraith soldiers grabbed Jake and took him to their biggest ship. They threw him into a cell. The cell smelled bad, like other prisoners had been there before him. He could see through an energy barrier that kept him trapped inside. Outside the barrier, he watched as Kraith workers tore his ship apart. They examined every piece, studying human technology. For 3 days, Kraith interrogators came to question him. They asked about Earth. They asked about human military power. They asked about the Coalition's defenses. Jake told them nothing useful. He only gave them basic information that anyone could find in public records. The main interrogator was a big Kraith with scars on its armor plates. It was getting frustrated with Jake's silence. "You humans think you are clever. You think silence makes you strong. We have your crew on 3 different ships. Maybe we should start hurting them. Then you will talk." Jake felt cold fear rush through his body, but he kept his face empty of emotion. The Geneva Conventions and the Coalition Charter both say you cannot torture prisoners. The Kraith made that clicking laugh sound again. Your laws mean nothing here, human. This is our space now. Tomorrow we will show you what happens to those who resist us. That night Jake sat alone in his cell. He closed his eyes and thought about his crew. He thought about Amy and Greg and Henry and all the others who had trusted him. He had failed them by surrendering. Now they would suffer for his decision. But there was something the Kraith did not understand. There was something most species in the galaxy did not know about humans yet. Humans could be peaceful. They could be friendly. They could follow rules and work with others. They could explore and learn and cooperate. But only until you pushed them too far, only until you took away everything that mattered to them, only until you left them with nothing to lose. The Kraith had made a terrible mistake. They thought humans were weak because they were peaceful. They thought silence meant defeat. They thought explorers could not fight. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Jake sat in his cell and waited. He said nothing. He showed nothing. But inside something was building. Something cold and determined. Something that had been sleeping in humanity for a long time. The Kraith thought they had won. They thought they had broken the human captain and his crew. But the humans were not broken. They were planning. They were watching. They were learning. And soon, very soon, the Kraith would understand their mistake. The silence was not weakness. The silence was patience. And patience was a weapon more dangerous than any gun. The room was cold. Captain Jake Morrison sat in a metal chair with restraints on his wrists. The restraints were too tight and they hurt. 3 Kraith interrogators stood in front of him. They had been asking him questions for many hours without stopping. Tell us about Earth's military bases, the lead interrogator demanded. How many warships does your home planet have? Jake stared past them at the wall behind their heads. He had learned this technique years ago during his training at the academy. He never thought he would actually need to use it. The training had seemed almost pointless back then, like something from ancient history when humans used to fight each other. The interrogator hit him across the face. Pain exploded in his jaw. Jake tasted blood in his mouth, but he did not react. He kept staring at the wall. Your silence does not protect anyone, human. We have already questioned your crew. We know about your defenses, your weapons, your orbital stations. We are just checking if the information is true. It was a lie. Jake knew his crew well. They would not tell the Kraith anything important. But the words still made him feel cold inside. If the Kraith were questioning his crew, they might be hurting them too. The questioning went on for another hour. Then the guards dragged Jake back to his cell. As he walked through the corridors of the Kraith ship, Jake looked at everything carefully. He memorized the locations of guard posts. He counted how many guards passed by. He studied the layout of the detention level. These were old habits from his early military training before he became an explorer. When he got back to his cell, he found something surprising. Someone had slipped a small data pad through the energy barrier. It was placed where the guards would not see it right away. Jake picked it up quickly and hid it in his uniform. Later, after the guards walked past on their rounds, Jake turned on the device. A text message appeared on the screen. It was written in human standard language. It said, Captain, this is Amy. We are on the Kraith ship called Dominator on Deck 7. They have been asking us questions, but we have told them nothing. Stay strong. We have a plan. Jake felt something change in his chest. Maybe it was hope. Maybe it was just pride in his crew. They had not given up. They were thinking and planning. He deleted the message and hid the datapad in a tear in his mattress. The next day brought something worse. The Kraith brought Jake to a window that looked down into a large room. Inside the room, Jake could see 3 members of his crew. They were strapped to tables. Kraith scientists were working on them with strange instruments that gleamed under bright lights. One of the people on the tables was young Greg Hayes. Medical research, the lead interrogator said casually, like he was talking about the weather. Your crew has been very helpful in teaching us about human biology. Did you know that humans can survive our nerve toxins for almost 4 minutes before their brains die? Very interesting. Jake's hands became fists. He wanted to hit the Kraith. He wanted to break through the window and save his crew. But he forced himself to stay calm. Showing anger or fear would only make things worse. They are protected by the Coalition Charter, Jake said. What you are doing is a war crime. War crime means we are at war, the Kraith replied. We are just doing science on available test subjects. If you cooperate, we can make things easier for your crew. It was torture disguised as science. Jake knew what it really was, but he also knew that reacting would not help. So he made his face show nothing. He said nothing. "I have nothing to tell you," he said quietly. The interrogator looked at him for a long moment. "Very well. Tomorrow we will select 3 more subjects for our research. Perhaps you would like to choose which of your crew we use." Jake remained silent. Over the next few days, the psychological warfare continued. The Kraith showed him recordings of his crew in their cells. They looked hungry and scared. The aliens described in detail what would happen if Jake did not talk. They threatened to throw his crew out into space. They threatened to sell them as slaves. They threatened to do experiments that would destroy their minds. But Jake stayed silent. The datapad messages from Amy kept coming. Someone was smuggling them to him. Maybe an alien worker who felt sorry for the humans, or maybe a coalition spy. Each message was short and used a simple code that Jake and his crew had practiced during training exercises. The messages told him that his crew was holding together. They were finding weaknesses in the prison. They were waiting for the right moment. On the 5th day, something changed. Jake felt the ship vibrate in a different way. The Kraith were moving their fleet. The ship entered quantum drive, that strange way of traveling faster than light. Jake had a bad feeling about where they were going. That night, the lead interrogator came to Jake's cell alone. "We are going to meet our main battle fleet. After that, we will go to your coalition space. We will show them what happens to species that try to stop Kraith expansion. You will be with us during this campaign. You will watch your coalition fall." Jake looked up at the alien. For the first time in days, he asked a question. "How many ships in your main fleet?" The interrogator seemed surprised that Jake had spoken. 200 warships. Each one is more powerful than anything your coalition has. Why do you ask, human? Are you finally ready to cooperate? Jake leaned back against the wall of his cell. He smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. It was cold and dangerous. Just curious about how many witnesses there will be. Witnesses to what? Jake's smile grew wider. You will see. The interrogator left, clearly confused by Jake's words. Jake closed his eyes and waited. The messages from Amy had told him everything he needed to know. His crew was not just surviving. They were not just waiting. They were preparing something, and soon the Kraith would learn an important lesson. They would learn why humanity had once been the most dangerous species on their own planet. They would learn that humans had not always been peaceful explorers. For thousands of years, humans had fought and survived and conquered. They had built weapons and strategies. They had learned how to win against impossible odds. That knowledge had not disappeared when humans went to the stars. It had just been sleeping. The Kraith had made the mistake of waking it up. Jake sat in his cell and counted the hours. His crew was out there, scattered across multiple ships. But they were working together somehow. They had a plan. The silence was about to end. And when it did, the Kraith would wish they had never captured the horizon's edge. The Kraith fleet came out of quantum space near a nebula. Captain Jake Morrison was brought to a viewing deck on the flagship. His hands were still in restraints. Around him, Kraith officers were celebrating. 200 warships filled the space around them. The ships gleamed in the light from nearby stars. The fleet commander was a huge Kraith named Vorkin. He stood near the window like a king looking at his kingdom. He pointed at all the ships with one of his limbs. Impressive, is it not, human? Each of these ships can destroy a planet. Tomorrow we begin our attack on Coalition space. Jake said nothing, but his eyes moved across the fleet. He studied the positions of the ships. He looked at what types of vessels they had. He had been silent for 6 days now. He only spoke when he absolutely had to. The Kraith thought this meant his spirit was broken. They thought they had won. They could not have been more wrong. Your crew is on 12 of our ships, Vorkin continued. They will watch as we destroy the Coalition. Maybe we will let them send final messages to Earth before we attack your home planet. Jake's jaw tightened, but he kept quiet. That night, back in his cell, Jake found another message on the hidden datapad. This one was longer than the others. It said, "The Captain, we are ready. All teams are in position. At midnight ship time, we will act. Everything is coordinated across all vessels." Amy says hello. Also, Greg figured out their security systems. Smart kid. See you soon. Jake deleted the message and lay down on his bunk. He had wondered if this moment would really come. He had wondered if his crew could actually do what Amy had been hinting at in her messages. Now he knew. They were going to try something impossible. At midnight, Jake was awake. He counted the seconds in his head. At exactly midnight, alarm sirens began screaming throughout the Kraith flagship. The first explosion came from the engine room. It was a controlled blast that destroyed the main power coupling. Emergency lights flickered on. Jake heard shouting in the corridors outside his cell. The energy barrier that kept him trapped flickered and went dark. Jake moved fast. He used techniques he had not practiced in years. The first guard came through the door and Jake hit him in the throat. The guard fell. The second guard raised his weapon, but Jake was faster. He grabbed the weapon and used it on the guard. Within seconds, Jake was armed and moving through the corridors. On all 12 Kraith ships that held human prisoners, similar things were happening. The crew of the Horizon's Edge had been waiting and watching for 6 days. Amy Parker, who knew everything about engines, had taught others how to find critical systems. Greg Hayes, who had studied alien computer security, had found weaknesses in the Kraith systems. Other crew members had stolen access cards. They had memorized when guards changed shifts. They had found where weapons were stored. They had been prisoners, yes. But they had also been 43 smart and determined humans with nothing left to lose. Jake found Amy Parker on Deck 9. She was leading a group of freed crew members. She had a Kraith plasma rifle in her hands and a big smile on her face. "Good to see you, Captain. We have taken control of engineering and life support." The Kraith are confused and disorganized. "What about the other ships?" Jake asked. "Teams on 9 vessels have secured important systems. We lost contact with 3 ships. But Captain, we did more than just escape." Amy's smile grew bigger. Greg figured out how to access their command network. Jake understood immediately. "You can control their ships. Not all of them, but enough. The Kraith build their ships to work as a networked fleet. Very efficient, but it means one weak point can affect many ships. We cannot fly all 200 vessels, but we can create chaos." Throughout the fleet, human teams were doing what Amy and the others had planned. They were not trying to escape. They were trying something far more bold and dangerous. They were going to steal the Kraith armada. Jake made his way to the flagship's bridge. Amy and a dozen crew members followed him. They broke into the command center in a fast and coordinated attack. They used speed and surprise to overwhelm the guards. Within minutes, the bridge belonged to the humans. Vorkin, the fleet commander, was still alive. He was pinned under a fallen support beam. He stared at Jake with hatred and disbelief. "This is impossible. You are explorers and scientists. You are peaceful people." Jake knelt down beside the Kraith commander. When he spoke, his voice was soft and almost gentle. "We were peaceful. We came to your space with friendship and good intentions. You took that away from us." "You cannot control this fleet," Vorkin hissed. "You do not have enough people or enough knowledge." "You are right," Jake agreed. "We cannot control all of it. But we do not need to." He stood up and nodded to Amy. She began typing commands into the Kraith computer systems. Her fingers moved quickly across the alien controls. Around them, the big window showed other ships beginning to move. Their movements looked wrong and jerky, but they were deliberate. "What are you doing?" Vorkin demanded. Jake looked down at him. "For 6 days you tortured us. You did experiments on my crew. You threatened to destroy the coalition and make humans into slaves. For 6 days I stayed silent because I knew my crew was working and planning and preparing. You are 43 against thousands," Vorkin said. "Even if you control a few ships, the fleet will destroy you." Jake shook his head slowly. "That is where you are wrong. Humans learned a long time ago that the most dangerous weapon is not the biggest gun or the fastest ship. It is information, and we have been gathering information on every ship in this fleet, every system, every weakness." Amy looked up from the console. "Captain, we are ready." Jake walked to the window. He looked out at the assembled Kraith armada. When he spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper, but everyone on the bridge heard it clearly. "You are all dead." Greg Hayes worked at another console, his face lit up by alien displays. The Kraith designed their ships to work as a networked fleet. Individual ships are powerful, but they are meant to coordinate through a central tactical network. It makes them efficient but also vulnerable. "We found the command ships," Amy added, pointing at the display. 7 of them. Each one controls about 30 other ships. They have been interrogating us for days, but we have been studying them just as carefully. Jake watched as the plan unfolded. And the virus? Not exactly a virus, Greg corrected. More like a cascading authentication failure. We introduced corrupted credentials into their network. Now every ship thinks the others are enemy vessels trying to infiltrate the system. On the display, Jake could see confusion spreading through the fleet. Kraith vessels were moving into defensive positions. Their targeting sensors were sweeping across their own allies. The Kraith had made a terrible mistake. They had assumed that human prisoners, especially peaceful explorers, would be easy to control. They never considered that humans might be capable of coordinated resistance or a full takeover of their vessels. It was a failure that would cost them everything. The Kraith fleet hung in space like a collection of deadly weapons waiting to strike, but inside that fleet, chaos was spreading like a disease through a body. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the captured flagship. He watched the tactical display as his crew's plan came to life. Amy Parker worked at the command console. Greg Hayes sat beside her. Both of them were focused on the alien systems in front of them. Their faces glowed with the light from Kraith holographic displays. "Explain it to me one more time," Jake said quietly. His eyes never left the display screen. Greg looked up at him. The Kraith designed their ships to work together as a network. Individual ships are powerful, but they are meant to coordinate through a central system. It makes them very efficient, but it also makes them vulnerable. We identified the command ships, Amy added. She pointed at 7 vessels on the display. Each one controls a battle group of about 30 ships. They have been asking us questions for days, but we have been studying them just as carefully. Jake nodded. He understood what they were saying. And the authentication failure? We introduced corrupted security codes into their network, Greg explained. Now every ship thinks the others are enemy vessels trying to hack the system. They are seeing their own allies as threats. On the display, Jake could see the first signs of confusion moving through the fleet. Kraith ships were turning their weapons toward each other. Their sensors were scanning their own allies for signs of attack. Lieutenant Henry Walsh entered the bridge. He brought more freed crew members with him. "Captain, we have secured the detention levels and the engine rooms. The Kraith crew is locked up and we control life support throughout the ship." "Casualties?" Jake asked. He needed to know how many of his people had been hurt or killed. 3 of ours are injured, but none are critical. We caught them completely by surprise. Jake had known this would happen. The Kraith had assumed that human prisoners would be weak and broken. They never imagined that humans might fight back, especially not in such a coordinated way. It was a mistake that would destroy them. "Captain, we are receiving messages from the other captured ships," Amy reported. "Lieutenant Simon from Team 3 says their ship is secure. Commander Lisa from Team 7 says they encountered some resistance but are gaining control." "What about the ships we lost contact with?" Jake asked. His voice was tight with worry. Amy's face became sad. "Still nothing from vessels 4, 8, and 11. We have to assume those teams were discovered before they could act." Jake felt the weight of those losses. Members of his crew might be dead. People who had trusted him. People who had followed his orders. But he could not think about that now. The mission had to continue. Grief would come later. "How long until the authentication failure spreads through the entire fleet?" he asked. Greg checked his calculations on the screen. "At the current rate, about 12 minutes. After that, every ship in the Armada will think every other ship is an enemy." "They will destroy each other," Jake said. "Not all of them," Amy corrected him. "The Kraith are not stupid. Once they realize what is happening, they will shut down the network and go to manual control. But by then, we will have created enough confusion to accomplish our goal." Jake understood. The goal was not to destroy the entire Kraith fleet, though that would be useful. The goal was to send a message that would echo across the galaxy for years to come. "Bring up the communication system," Jake ordered. "I want to broadcast on all frequencies. Coalition and Kraith both." Amy worked the controls. Jake felt the weight of what he was about to do. He was a captain in the Coalition Exploration Service, not a military commander. But the Kraith had forced this situation. They had turned peaceful explorers into warriors. "You are live, Captain," Amy said. Jake activated the broadcast. His image appeared on every Kraith ship in the fleet. It was also being sent across space to Coalition headquarters, light years away. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earthship Horizon's Edge. I am broadcasting from the Kraith flagship Dominator. 6 days ago, my crew and I were captured by Kraith forces while on a peaceful exploration mission. We were interrogated, tortured, and threatened with death. On the display, Jake could see Kraith ships trying to stop the broadcast. They tried to jam the signal, but Greg kept rerouting it through different relay points. The message kept going out. The Kraith commander told me that this fleet of 200 warships was preparing to invade Coalition space. They said they would destroy Earth and make humans into slaves. Jake paused. He let those words sink in. In Coalition space, defense forces would be scrambling to respond. Political leaders would be having emergency meetings. And most importantly, every species that had ever doubted what humans could do would be paying attention. I want to make something very clear, Jake continued. Humanity came to the stars seeking peace. We joined the Coalition because we believed in working together with other species. We have followed every law. We have honored every treaty. We have approached every new contact with open minds and friendship. He leaned closer to the camera. His voice dropped to that same soft whisper he had used with Vorkin. But understand this. Peace is a choice we make. It is not a weakness we suffer from. When you torture our people, when you threaten our homes, when you mistake our diplomacy for helplessness, you take away that choice. On the tactical display, the first Kraith ships began firing on each other. Their systems believed they were facing enemy infiltrators. The authentication failure was spreading exactly as Greg had predicted. My crew of 43 explorers has captured 12 Kraith warships. We have compromised the computer systems of this entire fleet. We did this not through superior weapons, but through intelligence, coordination, and the determination of people who had nothing left to lose. Jake gestured to Amy. She brought up video footage of human teams taking control of Kraith ships. It showed Greg bypassing alien security. It showed ordinary scientists and engineers turned into fighters. To the Kraith Empire, I say this. Retreat from Coalition space. Release any other prisoners you hold. Ask for peace or face the consequences. You have underestimated humanity. That mistake has cost you an armada. He could see Vorkin on the lower level of the bridge. The Kraith commander was still pinned under debris. He was listening to every word with growing horror on his alien face. To the Coalition, I apologize for taking matters into my own hands, but I will not apologize for saving my crew or defending humanity against an existential threat. Jake cut the transmission. He turned to Amy. Time? 3 minutes until complete cascade failure across the fleet, she said. Get our people off those ships, Jake ordered. Use the Kraith shuttlecraft. I want everyone brought to the ships we fully control. As his crew worked to evacuate from the more dangerous positions, Jake walked down to where Vorkin lay trapped. The Kraith commander glared at him with pure hatred. You have doomed your species, Vorkin hissed. The Kraith Empire will not forget this. We will come for Earth with everything we have. Jake knelt beside him. No, you will not. Because right now, every species in the Coalition is watching what 43 humans did to your armada. They are thinking about what 1 million humans could do, or 1 billion. They are realizing that we are not the weak link in the Coalition. We are the reason you should be afraid. He stood up and called to Henry. Get a medical team here. Treat the wounded Kraith. We are not monsters, even if they are. On the tactical display, the Kraith fleet had descended into complete chaos. Ships fired on each other while their crews tried desperately to regain control. The authentication failure had spread beyond even Greg's predictions. Jake watched it all with no joy, only grim necessity. This was not the mission he had wanted. This was not the future he had imagined, but it was the reality the Kraith had forced upon him. The Coalition fleet arrived 6 hours later. Admiral Carlos Martinez led them aboard the giant warship called Valiant Justice. By this time, the Kraith armada had been reduced to scattered groups of damaged ships. Many were completely disabled from firing on each other. Captain Jake Morrison's crew had gathered on 5 captured warships, including the Kraith flagship. Jake stood in the teleport chamber as Admiral Martinez appeared. The Admiral brought Coalition Marines with him. Martinez was a veteran of many battles. He was a stocky man with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much war. He looked around the captured bridge with an expression Jake could not read. Captain Morrison, Martinez said formally, I am placing you under Coalition authority. There will be an investigation into the events that happened here. Jake nodded. He had expected this. I understand, Admiral. My crew acted under my orders. Any punishment should fall on me, not them. Martinez studied him for a long moment. Walk with me, Captain. They left the bridge. Marines followed them at a distance. Martinez led Jake to a viewing deck where they could see both the Coalition fleet and what remained of the Kraith Armada. "Do you know what you have done?" Martinez asked quietly. "I saved my crew," Jake replied, "and I stopped a Kraith invasion of Coalition space. You did much more than that." Martinez pulled up a holographic display. It showed news feeds from across the Coalition. Every species, every member world, was broadcasting the same story. Humanity's response to Kraith aggression. Jake saw himself on those feeds. He saw the broadcast he had made, but he also saw something else. Military experts were analyzing what had happened. Politicians were debating. The entire galaxy was changing how they viewed humanity. "For 200 years, we have been the newcomers," Martinez said, "the species that arrived late to galactic civilization. We have been diplomats and explorers, scientists and traders. We have been very careful to prove we are not the violent primitives some species feared." "And now?" Jake asked. "Now they know the truth." Martinez pointed at the tactical display showing the captured Kraith ships. 43 explorers captured 12 warships and neutralized an armada of 200. You did what an entire battle fleet might struggle to do. And you did it from inside prison cells. Jake felt the weight of those words. "We did not have a choice, Admiral. The Kraith were going to kill us and then attack the Coalition." "I know. I have reviewed the recordings you sent. I have seen the evidence of torture and their invasion plans." Martinez's voice became hard. "The Kraith made a terrible error. They confused our peaceful nature with weakness." "What happens now?" Jake asked. Martinez was quiet for a moment, watching the stars. "The Coalition Council has been in emergency session for 5 hours. The Kraith Empire has already sent diplomats. They claim this armada was acting without authorization. They say it was a rogue battle group." "How convenient," Jake said with bitter humor. "Indeed. But the damage is done, both to the Kraith and to humanity's position in the galaxy." Martinez turned to face Jake directly. "Some species are calling for sanctions against Earth. They say you have destabilized galactic peace. Others are rushing to make stronger alliances with humanity. They suddenly understand what we are capable of. And the Council?" "The Council is terrified," Martinez admitted. "Not of the Kraith, of us. Your actions have reminded every species that humanity spent 10,000 years perfecting warfare before we ever reached the stars. We have been on our best behavior for 2 centuries. But what you did here proves that capacity has not disappeared. It was just sleeping." Jake looked out at the damaged Kraith ships. He thought about Greg Hayes cracking alien computer systems. He thought about Amy Parker coordinating teams across multiple vessels. He thought about ordinary crew members who had become warriors when they had to. "We are still peaceful," Jake said. "We still believe in cooperation and diplomacy. But we will not be victims. If that makes the Council uncomfortable, that is their problem." Martinez smiled slightly. "That is almost exactly what the Secretary General said to the Council 3 hours ago. You have changed everything, Captain. Earth's position in the Coalition will never be the same." "What about my crew?" Jake asked. "What happens to them? Officially, you are all being recalled for investigation and debriefing. Unofficially," Martinez's smile grew, "you are heroes. The Coalition Marine Corps wants to study your tactics. Intelligence services want to understand how you broke Kraith systems. And the Exploration Corps has received 10,000 new applications in 6 hours. All of them mention the horizon's edge." Jake felt something twist inside him. He had not wanted to be a hero. He had just wanted to save his crew and go back to exploring the stars. "There is something else," Martinez continued. "The Kraith Empire has agreed to negotiations. They are withdrawing forces from border regions and asking for a formal peace treaty. They are also paying compensation to your crew for the torture and illegal imprisonment." "They are afraid," Jake realized. "Terrified," Martinez confirmed. "Not just of what you did, but of what it means. If 43 humans can do this, what could 1,000,000 humans do? Or 1,000,000,000? What about Earth's full military? What about the colonies and defense stations?" Jake understood. Humanity had been playing nice, proving they could be trusted, but the Kraith had forced them to show their dangerous side. Now every species was rethinking their relationship with Earth. I need to see my crew, Jake said. Make sure they are okay. Martinez nodded. Of course. But Captain, one more thing. He pulled up another display showing military plans and strategic assessments. The Coalition Defense Force wants to create a new division for irregular warfare and special tactics. They want you to lead it. Jake stared at the Admiral. I am an explorer, not a soldier. You are both, Martinez replied. And that is exactly what the Coalition needs. Someone who understands that peace is the goal, but who can fight when necessary. Someone who can train others to do what your crew did. Jake thought about it. He thought about the future stretching before him. He could go back to exploration, pretend none of this happened. But the galaxy had changed. Humanity's place in it had changed. I need time to think, Jake said finally. And I need to talk to my crew. They are the ones who made this happen, not me. Fair enough. Martinez gestured toward the door. Your crew is waiting in the main hangar bay. Jake made his way through the corridors. Coalition Marines saluted as he passed. It felt strange being treated like a military officer when he was just an exploration captain who did what was necessary. The hangar bay was crowded with his crew. All 43 survivors were there. When Jake entered, they became quiet. All eyes turned to him. He saw Amy Parker, her uniform torn but her eyes bright. Greg Hayes stood beside her, looking exhausted but proud. Henry Walsh had his arm in a sling but was smiling. Captain, Amy said. The rest of the crew echoed her greeting. Jake looked at them. These ordinary people who had done extraordinary things. I have been told we are being recalled to Earth for investigation. There will be questions and interviews and probably political trouble. A few crew members laughed nervously. But I want you all to know something, Jake continued. What you did here was impossible. You faced terrible odds. You adapted to a horrible situation. You saved not just yourselves, but potentially the entire coalition. You proved that humanity belongs in the stars, not as victims but as equals to any species. He paused, looking at each face. I am proud of every one of you. Whatever happens next, whatever consequences we face, you did the right thing. You survived, you fought back, and you won. The crew applauded and Jake felt the weight lift from his shoulders. 3 months had passed since the incident with the Kraith fleet. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his quarters on Earth, looking out at the blue sky he had not seen in over 2 years. The investigation had been long and thorough, but in the end the Coalition Council had cleared him and his crew of any wrongdoing. They had acted in self-defense and had prevented a war, but everything had changed. Jake's door chimed. He called out permission to enter. Amy Parker walked in wearing a new uniform. It was not the uniform of an explorer anymore. It was the uniform of a Coalition Special Operations officer. They approved the new division, she said, sitting down across from him. The Coalition Defense Force officially created the Asymmetric Warfare Unit. They want us to lead it. Jake nodded slowly. He had expected this news. Have you decided what you will do? Amy smiled. I already accepted. Greg did too. So did Henry and most of the others. We talked about it. What we did out there, what we learned, it could save lives. If we can teach others how to think like we did, how to adapt and overcome, we could make a real difference. You were explorers, Jake said. You signed up to discover new worlds, not fight wars. We still are explorers, Amy replied. But we are also survivors. And we are teachers now. The galaxy needs to know that humans are not just peaceful. We are capable. We can defend ourselves and our allies. The Kraith are not the only threat out there. Jake stood and walked to the window. Below him, he could see the new recruits training. Thousands of young humans who wanted to follow in the footsteps of the Horizon's Edge crew. They wanted to prove that humanity belonged among the stars. The Secretary General called me yesterday, Jake said. She told me that 17 species have requested closer military ties with Earth since the incident. The Vortan Consortium wants to establish a joint defense pact. The Tellurian Assembly wants human advisors to train their special forces. We scared them, Amy said simply. Yes, but we also impressed them. Jake turned back to face her. For 200 years we have been trying to prove we are civilized. We followed rules. We were polite. We showed restraint, and some species saw that as weakness. And now they know better, Amy said. Jake sat down again. The Kraith Empire signed the peace treaty last week. They agreed to withdraw from all disputed territories. They are paying reparations not just to us, but to 3 other species they had been threatening. One act of resistance changed the entire political landscape. It was not just one act, Amy corrected him. It was 6 days of patience and planning. It was 43 people refusing to give up. It was every small act of defiance that led to that final moment. She was right. The victory had not been in the fighting. It had been in the waiting, the watching, the learning. It had been in Greg Hayes spending hours studying Kraith computer systems while pretending to be broken. It had been in Amy Parker memorizing ship layouts while being interrogated. It had been in every crew member who stayed strong when they wanted to collapse. I have been thinking about your offer, Jake said finally, about leading the new unit, and I keep thinking about what Admiral Martinez said, that I am both an explorer and a fighter, that humanity needs people who understand peace is the goal, but who can fight when necessary. Jake paused. I spent my whole career trying to move away from violence. I joined the Exploration Corps because I believed in peaceful contact and scientific discovery. But, Amy prompted, but the Kraith taught me something. Peace only works when all sides choose it. When someone decides to take what they want through force, you have to be able to stop them. Not because you want to fight, but because the alternative is slavery or death. Amy leaned forward. So you will accept? Jake nodded. I will. But we do this my way. We train people not just to fight, but to think. Not just to kill, but to survive and protect. We teach them that violence is the last option, not the first. We show them that the goal is always peace, even when we have to fight for it. That is exactly what we need, Amy said, smiling. The galaxy needs to see that humanity has not become warlike. We have just become realistic. Over the next few months, the asymmetric warfare unit took shape. Jake and his former crew became instructors. They taught recruits from Earth and from allied species how to think creatively in impossible situations. They showed them how to find weaknesses in any system. They demonstrated how ordinary people could overcome extraordinary obstacles. But they also taught something more important. They taught that strength came from intelligence and determination, not just weapons. They taught that the best victory was one where nobody had to die. They taught that humans could be both fierce and compassionate, both dangerous and diplomatic. News of the training program spread throughout the coalition. Other species began to request similar training for their own forces. The methods that Jake's crew had used, the combination of technical skill and adaptive thinking, became a model for military academies across the galaxy. The Kraith Empire watched all of this with growing concern. They had thought humans were weak. They had thought one armada could crush human resistance. Instead, they had awakened something they did not understand. They had reminded humanity of capabilities that had been dormant, but never forgotten. 6 months after the incident, Jake stood in front of a graduating class of the asymmetric warfare unit. The class included humans from Earth and the colonies, but also members of 5 other species. They had all learned the lessons Jake and his crew had paid for with blood and suffering. You are about to go out into the galaxy, Jake told them. Some of you will serve on exploration vessels. Some will join defense forces. Some will work as advisors to allied species. But wherever you go, remember what you learned here. He paused, looking at each face. Remember that peace is not weakness. Cooperation is not surrender. Diplomacy is not cowardice. We choose these things because they are right, not because we have no other option. But also remember that when peace fails, when cooperation is rejected, when diplomacy is answered with violence, you have the skills to respond. Not with anger or hatred, but with cold determination and clear thinking. Jake gestured to Amy, Greg, Henry, and the others standing beside him. My crew and I learned these lessons in the worst way possible. We were captured, tortured, and threatened with death. We had to become something we never wanted to be. But we survived. We adapted. We overcame. That is the human way. We prefer peace, but we excel at survival. We seek cooperation, but we can fight when we must. We offer friendship, but we do not accept subjugation. The graduates stood at attention, listening to every word. Go out there and show the galaxy what humanity really is, Jake said. Show them we are not the violent primitives some feared, but also show them we are not the helpless newcomers some assumed. Show them we are partners who can be trusted, allies who can be relied upon, and opponents who should be respected. After the ceremony, Jake walked through the training facility with Amy. They looked at the recruits practicing, learning, growing. "Do you think we did the right thing?" Amy asked. "Creating all of this, I mean. We changed humanity's path. We made us into something more militaristic." Jake thought about the question carefully. "We did not make humanity into anything. We just reminded everyone, including ourselves, of what we already were. Humans have always been survivors. We climbed to the top of the food chain on Earth not because we were the strongest or fastest, but because we could think and adapt. And now we do the same among the stars," Amy said. "Yes, but with one important difference." Jake smiled. "On Earth we fought for dominance. Among the stars we fight for coexistence. We are not trying to conquer anyone. We are just making sure nobody can conquer us." They stood together in silence, watching the next generation prepare for whatever challenges the galaxy might bring. The Kraith had made a mistake when they captured the horizon's edge. They had expected to break the human spirit. Instead, they had awakened it. Captain Jake Morrison had stayed silent for 6 days while his crew planned and prepared. And when the moment came, he had whispered words that changed everything. "You are all dead." Those words had been a promise and a warning. A promise to his crew that they would survive. A warning to the Kraith that they had made a fatal error. Now those words meant something more. They were a declaration to the entire galaxy. Humanity had come to the stars seeking peace. They had joined the coalition with open hands and good intentions. They still wanted those things, but they had also brought with them 10,000 years of survival instinct. They had brought intelligence and adaptability. They had brought the determination of a species that had conquered a planet and then reached for the stars. That determination had been sleeping, hidden beneath layers of diplomacy and cooperation. The Kraith had awakened it, and the galaxy would never forget the lesson. Peace was still the goal, but humanity would never again be mistaken for prey.